Hey guys, just finished watching Cloak and Dagger, Season 1, Episode 7, Lotus Eaters. What an interesting episode. I mean, I don't really have too many points to talk about in this episode because it was very much a self-contained episode. It's obviously important to the whole storyline, it's a key thing, but it's very much a self-contained episode, and it really was an interesting episode dealing with, all whole thing inside of Ivan has his head, and we didn't have really anything else going into it. There wasn't really anything else of that. We go into this head at the beginning of the episode really early on, then we're out just at the last minute. We have like less than 5 minutes outside of his head and stuff, and I think it was really cool playing with that, and the visual effects and stuff were really cool. The way things were doing the resetting and stuff was really quite interesting, quite cool the way things were going, and it wasn't just too it was a lot more emotional the way they're doing things, not just, we gotta hurry up and do this. It wasn't just, a physical thing trying to do this thing over and over and over and over again. It was a lot more of that. There's a lot more emotion into it, dealing with Tandy and her father and all kinds of stuff. It was really, really cool. So let's jump into it here. We got Tandy brings in to bring Try Home straight to Ivan Hess. Right when he teleported to her at the end of last episode when Dwayne died, Dwayne or Dunance or Dance, and stuff. So I think it's really going to be cool to see. It was really cool that she brought him straight there, and then they end up finding Ivan Hess inside of his own head, obviously. Nathan Bowen, we found out that Nathan Bowen was actually talking to Ivan Hess on the phone. So Tandy's father, Nathan Bowen, when they were on the bridge and he was driving and his phone rang, he was talking to Ivan Hess on the phone at that time, just before he fell into the water type thing. So that was really cool seeing there. And we see Tandy ends up talking to her father, and that becomes a really good part of this whole story. And that was really cool dealing with that. It was really quite interesting dealing with that. But she only got it was her father, but only from what Ivan Hess knew of her father type thing. So that was quite interesting with that. And then Tyrone wants to leave and go back. And that's when he leaves. He gets out of Ivan's head, and then he sees that Tandy didn't do it. She tricked him, and he goes back in, and at that point she's already been there 200 times. She's in there in the time that he took him to go out. So that was quite interesting with that. It also would be quite interesting to see. I think they should have played it on the end of this episode, but I guess it would have been a bit too long to do that. I'm glad they spent more time inside the head, but just to see how long did it take going in there. Tandy went inside and it was 200 times. So were they only touching him if someone had walked in the room, because Tandy was not moving when Ty tried to move her. So I'm just wondering what would have happened if someone else had walked in the room. What if Mina Hetz had walked in the room? That would have been really interesting to see, is what would have happened with that. And so how long were they like that? When the two of them are touching, how long is it like that? Is it only like 5 minutes? And that's why they were able to lock the door and no one was able to check up on there, because there was no reason to. She timed it because Tandy has been following and watching everything. They've timed it so that no nurse has already had to come in there. They've already done whatever they had to do to take care of him like that. They've already cleaned him, done all that stuff. So they don't need to touch him for don't need to go see him for another few hours. And I think that would be an interesting idea. As to how long it took to see how long it took to do that. Did they spend a whole day sitting there just touching the body? I think that would have been. How does Tyrone explain, where have you been for the past so long? And he's like, I was touching this body, and they need to make an excuse. I think that's really going to be cool to see if we get any ideas with that. Now, in the other times when Tandy's been touching other people, it doesn't seem like it goes too long, and people don't really recognize her or anything like that afterwards. So I guess it's unclear, that she could touch them and she could see like days and days and years worth of stuff, and yet it only takes like a couple of seconds inside. So that would be cool to see. That is to see how long it would actually take. Were they there for a long time? Well, who knows? It would be quite interesting to see that, and just to see how long they've been standing there, because it looked like it was dark at the end of the episode when Tandy went back to her church and stuff, where she's staying and stuff. So I think it would be interesting to see that and get an idea where things are going. But I'm glad the way they did this episode, because it really was a great episode. That's an 8.2 on IMDb here. I'm going to give it a bit better than that. Almost, I'm going to give it a 9.5. Or no, I'll give it a 9, just because a little bit better would be if they were full on, in costume or something and things like that. But otherwise, it's going to be a 9 episode so far for this season because there's a really good episode dealing with that. And then Tandy tries to stab Tyrone, and that's where she's learned to throw her stuff. And I was thinking about that when she was trying to stab Tyrone in the comic books, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've seen on research I've done online on the characters and stuff, is that Tandy actually has to expel her powers. Otherwise, she doesn't do it often enough. She goes too long without using her crystals and expelling it. They just kind of fire off without her control, and she has to just kind of discharge it, and it just kind of gets dangerous. So in order for her to control it, she has to kind of willingly use her powers so it doesn't build up inside of her. And I like that idea. And also in the comic books, Tyrone Dagger Cloak, he ends up getting if he doesn't get ends up getting fed by Tandy. Her actual daggers kind of keep him grounded because he goes a bit too crazy with the dark dimension that he actually teleports to. When he leaves, he's teleporting to another dimension. He comes back. So I think that's really going to be cool with this. And I was kind of hoping in this it's a whole different because it's going to be inside of Ivan's head and stuff. But the idea that Tyrone needs to feed and needs to, he needs Tandy to keep him whole, and the fact that they need to stay together no matter what they've gone through, no matter what, if they kind of don't like each other, if they, if Tandy had hated Tyrone after he stopped her from talking to her father, and all that stuff, that they had just kind of parted their separate ways, but they still need to stay together because, she needs to make sure he doesn't go crazy, and she needs to expel her energy at every point. So I think that's really going to be an interesting idea to see if they end up playing with that. That could be quite cool. Maybe, someone gets, maybe Connors later on gets, there's only a few more episodes left, so I doubt we're going to get anything like that, but it would have been cool to see maybe Tandy gets held captive by someone, and they try to keep her locked up, and then she kind of has to expel her energy. I think it would be a cool idea to see where things would go with that concept and how they're going to play with that. Hopefully they do, because it seemed like it was a big part of the comic books, at least based on a lot of the videos I watched on YouTube based on Cloak and Dagger and all the stuff I've looked at. So I think it's going to be cool to see where things go with that. And then they decide that they need to bring, because Tyrone ends up trying to go down and shutting down the plant, pressing the emergency and undoing the valves and stuff. But it doesn't work, so he decides that he needs to bring Ivan down there to shut down the plant because it's his mind, he needs to do it. And I think it's an interesting idea, but I keep on thinking, the first thing I thought of, well then okay, Tyrone just touched Tandy and Ivan and teleported, just Ivan and teleport. Now he hasn't done that yet in this episode. In this show, I don't think he's teleported with anyone yet. I think that's really going to be cool to see as he builds up that power now that he's inside of Ivan's head. He was really able to control his powers, and I think it's going to be cool to see that and bring that into now that he knows how to do it and he gets an idea. Is it going to be easier on the outside now, or is it just that was so only easy in there and nothing's changed on the outside? Because that would be disappointing. But he does know that he should be able to bring not only him with there, because when he teleported one of the first few times, I think it was at the second time when Connors was trying to shoot him, and he landed in that tarp and then teleported away. I think that he teleported and the bullet came with him. It didn't hit him, but the bullet came with him and hit his garbage can. So I think the idea of that is kind of in his head, that he knows that he should be able to bring things with him, not just him. So I think that would have been interesting to see as to why he couldn't just teleport Ivan there. Now maybe it would be a bit much, as he's never teleported anyone to bring Ivan and Tandy, but at least bring Ivan down there to shut down the stuff. But it was really cool seeing them fighting different people, and it's going to be cool to see how they play with this more. Hopefully this gets a season 2, and I feel like it will. It's pretty popular right now, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it would be pretty cool to see where things are going to go for a season 2 for this show. But I'd like to see them play a little bit more with Tyrone and Cloak's powers in terms of using it in a more fighting sense. It was really cool seeing Tandy with all the workers kind of going at her, throwing her daggers and all that stuff, and kind of just launching daggers. It would be really cool. It was really cool seeing that. But like I said in my last review, I'd like to see her use different size daggers. Not just big daggers, that are huge, bulky daggers. It'd be cooler to see her use little smaller daggers that she could throw, maybe a couple little tiny daggers to throw and hit a bunch of people. Like, let's say there's a crowd of zombies or whatever, like they're coming or whatever, like in this in this episode, and she wanted to throw like 3 at a time. It would be cool to see her throw 3 at a time rather than these big ones. Is she able to kind of launch them? Is she throwing them really? Is she actually throwing them, or is she kind of like throwing them with kind of like launching them out of her hand? I think that would be an interesting idea to see that, to see different versions of these spikes and not just the big simple spike all the time. It would be cool to see the long thin ones for doing different stuff. Maybe she can she wants to get into a locked room. It would be cool to see her just a long thin one that she could just poke through and bust a lock with her dagger without really destroying the outside of the door handle and completely kind of showing someone that someone would notice that she's in there. If she wants to get into a room and just need to just cut the door down and leave evidence that she was broke in there, but she's just be able to kind of put it in and kind of close it, put a little dagger in and break the insides of the pane without anyone noticing. I think it would be an interesting idea. Things like that would be cool to see her use her powers and kind of a little bit more accurate. And also, like I said, with Cloak, with Tyrone, seeing him use a better way for fighting, because it was interesting to see him fight, with his powers, now that he was able to kind of fully use his powers in this episode. But I'd like to see him a little bit more interesting way, because it's kind of boring just to see him teleport just behind the person, push them, and then teleport back, push them, and I was like, oh, okay. It works at the beginning when he's learning his powers, but once he kind of is in the real world and he knows how to fully control his powers, hopefully they can kind of come up with more unique ways, more interesting ways for him to actually fight and make fight scenes with Tyrone a lot better. Because right now, Tandy, she's pretty good with her fight scenes, and it's really cool seeing that. Her using her powers and all that, and it's really cool seeing that. It's just Tyrone, his fight scenes with his powers are not really interesting, so I'd like to see a little bit more creative fighting style in terms of using his powers, the teleporting. So I'd like to hurry up and by the end of this episode bring the whole thing where he is able to absorb enemies and just leave them in the dark dimension. I think that'd be quite cool, especially if he's dealing with zombies or things like that, where he can just leave them in that dark dimension and not deal with them whatsoever. I think that could be really cool with that, and to see where things are going to go would be quite interesting to see, because it would be cool if he's fighting maybe just a drug addict or some random person. Maybe he could teleport them, and then they could teleport a few feet in the air and then come crashing down. I think that would be an interesting idea, playing with things like that once he learns to being more creative with his fighting style in terms of using his teleportation. So I think it's really going to be cool to see where things go with that. Then they end up managing to wake up Ivan, but he has no memory of who they are and stuff, and Mina gets there, so and we see that he's able to hug her and stuff, but it's like, I'm wondering how long, is there going to be any use to them, to Tandy just yet, to be able to testify? I mean, he probably can't leave the hospital for a while because it's been 8 years, so he's going to be atrophied. He's not going to be able to move, so it's going to be a while before he could even get anywhere. But I guess he could probably have a wheelchair, and we'll see where things are going to go with that. Maybe if he'll testify, and I think it's going to be quite interesting to see. And I think that maybe now that Ivan's alive, it could be an interesting idea to bring in O'Connor's, find out that O'Connor's was maybe involved with Roxxon in hiding and in covering up, the death of the death of Tandy Bowen's father, the covering up, covering up the explosion of Roxxon. He wasn't really employed by them. Obviously, we looks like he wasn't, because he shot Billy during the time of the explosion, but it feels like afterwards, maybe Roxxon could have said, oh, we need someone to cover this up, someone who will who will be able to just cover things up in the police and stuff from the whole investigation of into Roxxon Industries and the oil rig explosion. So I think it could be cool to see that. I'd like to see some connection, because in this episode Tyrone was doing all this just sheer because he's a nice guy and he wants to help out his friend Tandy. So I feel like it would be more interesting to see him connected to this and have a more reason for him to be involved, and have him, a connection between Roxxon and Connors. But at the same time, we only have so few episodes left that they need to come up with a really big connection that makes sense and is actually organic, rather than just kind of a connection that's just kind of willy-nilly, that's like, oh, here's a little connection, and it's like one little thread that kind of doesn't make sense, and it's not really strong enough. It needs to be a strong connection that makes sense. It's like, oh my god, that was probably there the whole time, rather than something that's just there for no reason type of thing. So I think it's going to be cool to see where things go with all this, and how things continue on from here. But hopefully we get that connection between Connors and Roxanne. Maybe there could be some. Maybe they just hire him now. I think that would be an interesting idea to see them. Maybe he ends up getting hired by Roxanne to take out Ivan, so that they can't say anything against them. But at the same time, I think if they do that and they're just hiring him for that one job, then it just kind of it seems like an interesting idea to bring it together. But at the same time, it's not a big enough connection that I want to have between Connors and Roxanne. I wanted there to be like, oh my God, there's this hidden connection between them that's been there the whole time, instead of them, oh, we're just gonna hire this guy just to do that. It doesn't really. It's like, oh, it's a coincidence, not really, a solid connection, and as much as I would want it to be between Roxanne and Connor. So it's really going to be cool to see where things go with that. And that's when we end the episode after they wake up, and Tandy and Tyrone calls Tandy since no one ever calls her, and he plays her a tape of, listen to the tape of Billy. That's when they end the episode, listening to the tape recording of Billy's voice, because Tyrone doesn't remember his voice at all. So I think it's going to be cool to see where things go with all this and see how things continue on from here. I think it's quite fun that we've already seen Cloak's costume. Hopefully we can get some sort of version of Tandy's costume. That would be really cool. It would be fun to see that. And I definitely can't wait to see where things go from here. So definitely going to be checking out, I haven't checked out the trailers yet for the next episode, but we'll see if I end up trying to do that. But this episode was really fun. I can't wait to see where things are going to go from here. So let me know what you think, guys, about this episode in the comments below. Season 1, Episode 7. Locust Eaters, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
I'm Captain America, here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have.
Subscribing.
Sometimes is the key to victory. Sometimes it leads to very little, and it seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing. How many more of these?
You're still here.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Peace.
It's over.